All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Inside In Tennis podcast, all part of the Believe Network, where there is a lot of great content. We have a podcast available on all your platforms as well. Mitch Michals, my own home studio, tennis season raging on. We got the man with the golden voice, a million catchphrases, all of them dynamic. Former player, he's worked in tennis and he's been a part of the tennis community for a long time. Friend of the show. Into the clay season to talk about the game that he knows and loves. Robbie Koenig back on the program. Robbie, always exciting, always gets me going energy-wise when you join the show. So thanks for making some time to come on the podcast.
I love it, Mitch. I love hanging out with you. I love talking with you. I think we've been chatting for about 10 minutes already before we've officially gotten underway. So much to talk about. We both love our sports, don't we? So come on, man. Let's get stuck in straight away.
I had to hit the record. I had to be like, stop. We got to do a podcast. I have to hit record. I was getting lost there, but no. Crazy, right? Just with what's going on in the sports world and the tennis calendar, obviously, which we focus on in this show. But Monte Carlo in the rear view, the road to Roland Garros. I compared it to, Robbie, it's kind of like a fight camp, right? You got 2 months, you're ramping up, you got the prize at the end of the tunnel, but there's all these checklists along the way. And we just had a big one, Monte Carlo, the Principality. I think this lead up to a major is unlike any other, the Roland Garros road and all these stops across beautiful Europe.
It's spectacular. Time to get your hands a little dirty and your socks and your shoes. And it's such beautiful tennis to watch, isn't it? The way the players glide around the courts these days with their nuclear athleticism. And hopefully, fingers crossed, you get some good weather during the European clay court season, because sometimes that can hamper things. We've seen some freezing conditions in Munich, for example. Monte Carlo played ball for us. I thought there was a rumor going around that they might move the final to Saturday because the weather was going to be so bad on Sunday. But I'm glad they got it into that window there. And of course, it's a good chance for everybody to grab a Masters 1000 title or two before Jannik Sinner comes back in Rome. So there's a lot of boxing going on between the guys trying to get their hands on a title, Mitch.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Everybody except Alcaraz, I think, wants him to come back because it brings out the best in him and he's had success, but everybody else is like dreading. It's like, when's the bully coming back? Jannik Sinner still going to be number one when he comes back, which is another side. But yeah, Robbie, Monte Carlo held up. I mean, it was cold at first. We saw the long sleeve shirts and tights on, but ended up being nice and the great tennis was brought out. And once again, we saw Alcaraz shine on the clay. His first Monte Carlo title. Hadn't even won a match going into this tournament, which was crazy, given not playing and his history and how young he still is. We forget. But with Carlos Alcaraz, he recalibrates. There were some questions, how the golden swing went for him, the loss to Draper in the Indian Wells semis, and then Miami going out to David Goffin. But he recalibrates. He spots some guys a couple first sets. He's like, here, I'll give you the first, and then I'll beat you anyway. But Alcaraz, when he's at the apex of his powers, Robbie, he's just like a whirling dervish out. He's just a force that it's impossible for these players to deal with. And he was at the apex yet again.
Yeah, he's fun to watch, isn't he? That's what makes him so easy on the eye. And for all the faults that he does bring to his game when he's not completely dialed in, and we've seen it over the last couple of months, right? When he's missing and he's losing to guys that he shouldn't, and the forehand starts to break down. I think for me, that's part of the excitement of watching him play is the unexpected. We've harped on about that. The athleticism coupled with the creativity. And of course, I think, a clay court gives him a little bit more time as well on his shots. He's got the firepower, which is so annoying to everybody else because he can still hit through the court even on clay. But the fact that he gets more time on the ball now is so dangerous for everybody else. And I think some other interesting dynamics at play as well. 2 titles that he's won now, Rotterdam and Monte Carlo, without Juan Carlos Ferraro in the coaching camp, right? You mentioned the fact that Sam Lopez is going to be joining him this year. I think when I had a look back, Sam is a very healthy 12-1 when he's been in the coaching box. So for me, that's a very interesting dynamic at play there. I'd love to know what's going on behind the scenes, if he just wants a different voice in his ear. Carlos, the fact that he's brought Sam on board. I mean, Sam Lopez has traveled with him on previous occasions.
Right.
And I tell you what it reminds me of as well, to a lesser degree, is Juan Carlos speaks a lot, right? The coaching when Alcaraz is playing, it's incessant. And this is just me surmising now, Mitch. I'm just wondering if he wants a little bit more quiet time. He's playing, and just to stay within his own thoughts, it's something that always resonates with me whenever I think about Darren Cahill. Darren doesn't like to overcoach because he believes on the importance of getting inside your own head and problem solving yourself. And I think Darren's one of the best in the business. And I'm just wondering if Carlos wants a little bit more of that, being in his own thoughts right now. Certainly, we can see the success he's had with Sam Lopez being in his team. And the question I ask is, what happens if he's feeling a little bit more comfortable at the moment with Lopez in his camp versus JCF? But JCF's supposed to come back, let's say, for Madrid and Rome. How do you deal with that behind the scenes? Even if those are designated weeks for a particular coach, but actually, you know what, I'm having better success with this guy. I actually want this guy to come. These are all the thoughts I'm thinking, you know?
Yeah, it's hard for us, me especially, to know what's going on behind the scenes. And timing is everything, right? Who you play, how the draw works out. I would just say from my vantage point, much on the outside, it does look like Carlos can kind of get in his head a little bit when JCF is there. It's almost, it's almost like a father-son relationship in a lot of ways, where Carlos gets to a point where he doesn't want to let him down, where he might be pressing a little too much. And then might have some mental inexplicable decisions. You were calling that match when he lost to Djokovic in Australia, and you were saying, I think the return position should be adjusted. Like, I think he should adjust it. What's going on here? And it never happened. So the point being, Carlos can press, and sometimes it might be better where less is more. It's a foundational point in life where maybe sometimes too much of anything could be a bad thing, but another storyline to monitor, I guess.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it'll be fascinating how that shakes out. That's something I'll be looking forward in all the events leading up to the French Open.
So a couple stats for you. I mean, he goes through Artur Fies in the quarterfinal, great match. He beats Fokina, his countrymate, and then he beats Musetti in the final. He has 6 Masters titles at the age of 21, does Carlos. And in major and Masters finals, he is 10-1 in his career, with that only loss to Novak Djokovic in Cincinnati. So say what you want about the reports of his demise being greatly exaggerated. He's also proven, Robbie, he's a big match player.
I can't believe you bring up those 2 numbers, because literally when he won a match point, Nick was commentating, Nick Lester, our good friend, and I text him those very stats. Let's not forget how good this guy is in the biggest of matches. Yes, he might have lost earlier, but as you've highlighted, right? I mean, perfect record in major finals, and just that one loss at Masters 1000. And we know how difficult it is to win these things. We've become used to ridiculous numbers from the big 3, but you look how difficult it is. I think Stan's only got 1 Masters 1000. What an unbelievable player he is. He's got 3 majors. Has Wawrinka. Someone like Grigor was only able to get his hand on 1 for a while, back in Cincinnati, I think 2017, when he won the Tour finals, right? So it's darn hard to do it. So to be able to do what he's done, and we forget how young he is. The guy is mentally very, very strong, and he seems to have worked through what he describes as a tough period. He spoke about that in his post-match press conference. Getting on court for the last month has been difficult, and so that's what got my mind thinking about what's going on behind the scenes there, Mitch. But man, does he produce when it matters most? And that's what matters in sport.
Yeah,
right?
He certainly does. And
the only thing that matters in sport is how you perform on the biggest stage and the biggest moments. And that's what defines you, Rob.
How old was Roger Federer when he won his first major? 21 going on 22.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
Carlos has a lot of accomplishments early, and I know there's a long career left to catch those guys, but yeah, it defines you how you perform those matches. And, he beats Musetti in the final. It was a great run by Musetti, we'll get to in a second, but obviously ran out of gas, had the issue with looked like the hip. I thought Carlos played very smart final after losing the set, saw the guy was hobbled, wasn't at his best, and didn't go full Carlos mode. He wasn't trying to put on a hot shot clinic. He's like, I'll just grind you down. It was very Novak-like in a way. He's like, I don't need to hit winners. I can just outlast you.
It's a great point. And you wonder how much that's going to resonate with him. That this is what I did. This worked in a big match. I showed great patience. And okay, this is just another string to add to my bow now. And, you can always tap on that when things aren't going your way further on down the line. So I think a very important learning curve. Sometimes you only have those very good learning curves when you lose. That's when you recognize them the most. But to have it and win, what a bonus.
Great run for Musetti, the ending notwithstanding, right? He beat Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals for the first time in 6 tries, and then he survives a marathon with Alex de Minaur, which, if we're being honest, Robbie, I think de Minaur going 3 sets, it's like that just takes your soul. Like having to go through that match, then play a match the next day, well, maybe the hardest thing a tennis player could do. But all things considered, great run by Musetti to level up and get to the final.
Yeah, certainly was, especially after losing the first set in the manner in which he did. I think at the end of the second set, start of the end of the first set, start of the second set, de Minaur had broken in 14 consecutive games. I mean, that's insane, right? At this level. And that's where I think great mental resilience. I think Musetti's getting better and better in that department, realizing, hey, it's 2 out of 3. It's not 1 out of 2 sets here. And just to know that his clay court game would come to fruition at some stage, and he just stuck with it. And to win it that close in a deciding set tiebreak, it's a phenomenal effort. And I always share the story, and I don't know if I've shared it with you yet, but 2 guys that really sit close to my heart are Musetti and Mensik, only because my son, who's at Baylor now, played them both when they were pretty young. Mensik when he was 16, and he played against Musetti when he was 18. So when you've seen them at such a young age, in here in South Africa playing junior events and lower level pro events, it is so cool, man. I'm so inspired by young people, Mitch, and to get to see them early on in their career, and you can see they're different, man. They are just different. They were different, and it's so nice to see them having this great success that they're both having now.
Yeah, I saw you haven't shared those stories, but I didn't know about Musetti. I knew about Mensik because you shared that story on Twitter, and you saw like you and firsthand, right? You saw something special in him because when you do what he did, win your first title against Novak as a Masters event. But for me, it was he had the greatest returner of all time, unable to pick up his serve, and that was like a whoa moment that we don't really have a lot of, I think, as we pass the years.
Yeah, it is so cool, isn't it? I mean, you tell your kids and your grandkids about that, he'll be dining out in Prague for the rest of his life on that match. But, even back then, and he was only just 16 when Luke played against him, and just a different mindset, hey? Just so concentrated. He was like a mini pro already. The game was big. And he just knew where he was going. You could see there was no pushing going on. He was going for his shots, even when he had a bit of a wobble there in the second set against my son. There was no panic. Going to play the same way, where I want to be in 4 years' time. It's just the maturity was beyond his years. And for somebody who's in the game and is always watching the very best players play, it was only going to be a matter of time before he got there. And then also, the other cool thing was I got to call his Australian Open boys singles final 2 years later. And of course, where he broke down on the court, and he couldn't serve on match point when he was match point down against that young American kid. I can't remember his name now in the final. Full body cramps, right? And that was mind-blowing to see. But it's been great to watch his evolution as a player.
Yeah, what was he, 7 for 7 in tie breaks in Miami? I mean, that's a cool customer. And just the final note on that, going back to Australia, I think he lost. Was it the Fakina got him, and that match went away from him in Australia this year? I think that's who it was.
Okay.
But he handled the loss with class, is my point. Like, he didn't freak out. He said, I didn't have it today. Body was breaking down. And handling losing, which you're going to do. Everybody loses. Most players are losing each week, is a big deal. Just going forward, though, with him, I mean, I know we're skipping ahead, but he's taking the court tomorrow against Yannick Hanfmann. First time since Miami. Took the week off, recharging, switched the surface. What should we expect from the Czech superstar teenager in his first match since that life-changing title?
Yeah, I think the serve is going to be bouncing nice and quick through the air there in Munich. It's so quick. I think he plays well on all surfaces. I think mentally he is in such a good place as well. I cannot wait to see how he plays on the grass. I think that game that he's got, good server, good returner, the guy's going to be money on the grass as well. So I see him as one of these guys who's going to be able to play well on all 3 surfaces. He's going to be fresh as well, even though he's missed a couple of weeks. I think that's going to keep him fresh, because we're really coming to a busy time in the calendar now, don't we? From the clay court events into the grass, straight into the US summer. Everything really does get compacted now. So many big events week in or week out.
Yeah, can we get that? I mean, I'm going to say dream matches that I want, and with you in the broadcast booth, obviously, but can we get Mensik and Draper on grass? Maybe Wimbledon?
Oh
Give me
man,
that showdown.
oh, behave. Oh, oh, man.
Some
How
good
well is
ones
he
for
playing? Man?
sure.
Jack's playing so well as well. All these young kids, as I say, I find them so inspirational when you hang around young people, man. And again, I've watched Jack train on so many occasions at the NTC when I've been in London. And it's just fantastic to watch this kid's evolution from a guy whose body was constantly breaking down to now being an absolute physical beast.
Certainly is. We got more with Robbie Koenig here on the Inside in Tennis podcast, talking start of clay court season, Monte Carlo, into some great events this week and some other topics and notes. Just putting a bow on Monte Carlo, I want to get your thoughts on some other players there. I mentioned him, but Artur Fils gave Alcaraz, I think, all he could handle. Toughest test, probably the match of the tournament. For a young Frenchman who is the only player this year to make all three Masters quarterfinals, Robbie, the question I asked going in was, how's he going to respond to playing the best? Welcome to the big leagues. And I thought he swam excellently. I thought he played very well, and I thought he showed ingredients, stuff to work on, obviously, but this is a guy whose potential could be at the very best in the game.
I know he's got some proper firepower. And I think as well, playing a match of that magnitude in Monte Carlo where you were going to get a lot of support, that certainly helps from a mental perspective. So what that does is early on in the season, it helps grow the belief even more so that you can carry that through into the other big matches that you play. And I always feel that's where, especially the French, they have Monte Carlo early on in the season, but they also have Paris-Bercy at the end of the season when everybody's tired and perhaps a little jaded. They get a lot of support there at the end of the year, and that's why we often see them do well. So watch out for him to do well at that event. But huge firepower. He's not scared to come and finish off at the net. I just think the biggest thing for Arthur going forward now is the concentration and the mind power development. It was actually his coach, Sebastian Grosjean, who highlights to me, Robbie, go and have a look at his record in the majors. And I think every single match that he's won at a Grand Slam, it's never been in straight sets. So you see a lot of this, Mitch, where he plays well for 40 minutes and then there's a drop-off. And does the drop-off cost him a set? If he wants to go deep in the majors, you want to try and alleviate those set losses early on in the tournament, right? A couple of straight setters there, good concentration for slightly longer periods of time. We've clearly seen the athleticism there, the games there. Now, the mind, that is the glue that keeps it all together. Keep working on that, young man, and he's so fun to watch, isn't he? He's good for the game, man. We love characters and guys who are showmen like it. I just think back to that match against Zverev in the finals last year in Hamburg. I mean, you talk about bringing it, but how good was that? So that's what we know he possesses.
Yeah, he's got that toughness. That was a lot going on in that match. The crowd, Zverev, the weather, shutting the roof.
Exactly.
Crazy stuff. Yeah, just looking at it, look at all these players, Robbie, 22, 21 and under that are making their move, and the men's are I know greatness is hard to attain. That's the reason why there's only a few greats, is because of how hard it is. But depth-wise of potential great players is at a point where I can't recall in the last couple of years.
This is a question I'm asking a lot of my tennis friends and tennis fans as well. Is do you prefer the dominance of three guys like what we've seen, or do you like a lot more variety, like what we're seeing right now? And
I'd split it.
Characters.
Yeah, I would split it. I love what we have right now because I don't control. Concentrating power at the top might be a little stale at times, which I totally get. I like that we have roughly, you can say, if you look at the future, let's say right now it looks like 10 to 12 guys that you could say, oh, this could be something. But there's no guarantees, and the odds are, Robbie, it's going to be half that, if not less. So I like that we've got contenders to the throne, but only a few get to wear the crown.
Yeah. You got a couple of guys to pick from, eh? So I think that's what excites me. Certainly when I sit back and I have a look at the rankings and I scroll down there and I see the different Masters 1000 winners, I'm like, okay. I mean, who's going to be in the top 10? Who's going to be playing in Turin at the tail end of the season of these young guys?
How cyclical? I mean, it's great. It's funny how things work and things switch, right? Because we were saying this about women's tennis. Oh, it's too many contenders, not enough. Men's, it was consolidated. It seems like it's flipped, right? The women have their power players, and the men have more variety and parity. So it's funny how that works.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's the beauty of sport, right? I think you always want great rivalries. Ultimately, I think that's what drives any sport. But if you certainly can have a couple of guys there that can knock on the door and give those special two or three players a hard time, I
Hmm.
think that makes for the perfect scenario. So, we've got Sinner at the top of the game.
Yeah.
We've got Alcaraz at the top of the game. It's like, who's going to join those two there? Maybe have a trinity like we had before, maybe even more.
Hmm.
I think tennis is in a good place. I love it, man. I love the sport.
And also in Monte Carlo, we got the defending champion not to reach the final. Tsitsipas loses to Musetti, as I mentioned, and gives an all-time great Robbie non-answer about working with Goran Ivanisevic after Roland Garros. Just totally says I can't answer that question, which tells a lot of people what they need to know. But I saw that news and I was rubbing my hands together. I'm like, all right, Tsitsipas and Goran on the grass. Like, okay, but what was your reaction to that news breaking?
Um, I'm not surprised it's happening after the clay court swing because I think Goran, he knows that the grass court surface, particularly well. I think Tsitsipas knows how to play on the clay. He knows what it takes to go deep at these Masters 1000s and win them. So I think probably the most help that he needs is on the grass. I was just having a look at his record before, I came onto your podcast, and he's barely in the positive match wins on grass in his career. I think it's 22 wins, 17 losses. He's just in the positive at Wimbledon. So overall, it's a surface for a single-hander. You would think it would suit him, but it actually doesn't. It doesn't afford him the amount of time that he likes on his shots. But I think where Goran is going to play the biggest part is not only on the grass, but more so after the grass court season, because historically, when I have a look back at Tsitsipas's record second half of the year, it's not nearly as good as the first half of the year. And perhaps the biggest glaring weakness is when you have a look at his results differential on the two major hard court majors that we have, Australian Open versus his results at the US Open.
Mm.
And I think he can improve in the second half of the year. I think if he wants to make some steps with his game, perhaps that's something that Goran can look at. How can I get the best out of Steph in the second half of the year? Obviously, he's been winning a lot of matches on the clay, so the argument might be, well, he comes into the second half of the season a little bit more jaded, but manage that because there's still a lot of tennis to be played. His record. Do you think his record's better at Wimbledon or at the US Open?
See, you just gave me a trick question there because I got to be honest. I would have guessed wrong. I would have said Wimbledon, but now I know what you're asking me.
Yeah.
So that said, U.S. Open's been a house of horrors. You put it mildly. Like some of those losses were horrible, like and just inexplicable in a lot of. I remember the Chorich match, and that was stunning.
Yeah. Almost 6 match points, I think it was.
I think you're right, though.
So,
I think you're right, though. I think, yeah.
These guys know how to play, right? I don't know. Sometimes just the effect of somebody in your camp. It might just be a word or two. It might be how Goran just makes him feel. That has an impact on his game. And I've been around Goran a lot. He's one of my favorite friends out on tour. And he makes you feel pretty good about yourself. He's got an amazing demeanor about him. And, that might be a difference maker in itself. Not necessarily specific X's and O's and patterns of plays and statistics. It might be something as simple as that, just basic communication.
Well, I can't wait to see. Can't wait to find out what happens. Other thing, and we'll wrap a Monte Carlo in this, but love getting doubles into the show, Robbie. The Ben Shelton dust up with the Italians, and we love tense moments in tennis. But reaction to Shelton getting into it with the Italians. I'll leave it open ended because I'm really curious your take on this one.
Oh, I love this stuff. I did not see the match, so first of all, I had to go back and do some homework. So first person I got hold of was Rohan Bopana. I said, send me the video, Bobs, which he did, of course.
By the way, that was the best part to me. Bopana was the voice of reason. Like, hey, come on, guys. Like, I'm going to see you guys later down the road. Like, let's all chill. But I thought it was great. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I watch the point back and I see it unfold, I was expecting it to be an in-your-face smash on top of the net. Could have hit the ball anywhere, and you've tagged him. But then I see it's a drive forehand volley from the middle of the court that's caught Vavassori on the rib, right? But did you see Vavassori's volley before that? It was a really bad volley. It was a basic volley and it was a bad one, and he popped it up. And my comment to a few of my former doubles contemporaries were that if I volleyed like that and you hit the ball into my chest, it was my obligation to thank you for hitting me because I'd hit such a poor volley. Because next time I would be ready to hit a proper volley first time round. So I think you can tell clearly where I stand on that. The first volley was pretty poor from Vavassori, and he deserved to get hit. And he should have given a thumbs up to say, "Hey Ben, thanks for waking me up." It was early on in the match anyway. But it's part of the game.
I know, and that's where I'm on. Vavassori did pull out of his next tournament. It was heated. I don't like lingering dialogue. I like to just get it all out in the open as a sports fan. I think Shelton talking away to his box is just me nitpicking, but let's be honest, Robbie, and I think this is part of it too. Shelton, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but the fact that he does, give a little extra cheer on points as opposed to players, that's playing into why Vavassori was so mad. It's not just getting hit. I think there's the reaction side of it too.
I mean, if you talk about getting hit, go back and watch how often Leander Paes tagged people. Jaka Alting got me a couple of times, man, that guy. And he would ask you in the match, did that hurt? And you would say no. He says, you're lying, Robbie, that hurts. I know I got it properly there. Those are the kind of conversations we would have. And it happens, man. It happens. And if he has pulled out because it's hurt him, that's unfortunate. That is just sport. You can twist it, you can get hit. It's part of the game. I thought it would be a lot more in his face, and I thought he had a lot more of a leg to stand on, seeing only the reaction after the match when they shook hands. I thought, wow, it must have been really bad. And I don't think it was.
No, I just watched the Federer Delpo Indian Wells final from 18 that Delpo won. And there was a point late in the second set.
Yeah.
Roger just drilled him, like one hand backhand right in the body, just tagged him.
Yeah.
Hand up for like a split second, and then, hey, it's my point. Time to keep playing. That's the game. Speaking of Shelton, though, Robbie, heck of a match today. As he started his match in Munich, trying to get his singles trajectory back on track after some early losses in Miami and then Monte Carlo, but he survived, and I don't use that word loosely, against Borna Goja. Saved a bunch of match points. Gojo, you talk about sports, Robbie, trying to get a big win. He got tight. He got tight down the stretch and just couldn't inch past the finish line. And whether it's tennis or we were talking about the Masters, like, world-class athletes get tight.
They do, man. That's the beauty of sport, right? That's why it's the best form of reality TV, I always say. But Borna Gojo, that guy's got a proper serve as well. So when you're playing at a place where the ball is quick through the air, he is always going to be a tough customer. And the fact that you could survive a match like that'll give Ben a lot of confidence. And just to keep using his serve intelligently, just get those reps. I never grew up playing on clay at all, Mitch. And I'm trying to equate this to Ben, because in America you don't play that much on clay growing up either. And I never particularly liked the surface, but by the end of the clay court season, by the time Roland Garros came around, I just loved it. And I wish I could play a little bit more on it. And the problem for me was that I didn't win enough matches early on in the clay court season. So it was only by the time the end of the clay court season came around that I really started to fall in love with the surface. So that's why I always hoped that for somebody like Ben, you get those reps in early on the surface. Couple of match wins, squeak out one here, get 2 or 3, maybe even four matches under your belt this week. And man, it gives you so much confidence, and you're moving, and in the weeks going forward in the 2 big ones.
He's a dogged competitor. Even when he's not playing well, he's bringing the fight, bringing the energy. So love to see that. Munich is where Jan-Lennard Struff won his first title of his career last year, defending champ. He draws Toronto, a tough matchup early. And you have Alexander Zverev, who won today over Mueller, trying desperately to get back on track after going 6-6 to start the year. So it has not been good for him, Robbie. And he's had a lot of pressure, another Grand Slam final loss. But I wonder what's going on with him, and could a little home cooking, a little home soil tennis be what the doctor needed to get him back on track?
Yeah, I think it always does. He's had a lot of success there. He loves playing there. But yeah, it just shows you the power of the mind, right? Just all the opportunities with Sinner not being around. We all thought this could be a good opportunity for him to get really close to being number one player in the world, but it hasn't materialized, and perhaps he's just overthinking it. And yeah, it's tough to know what's going on unless you're inside the camp there. But
Hmm.
you try and search for answers in his game, and for me, and he's mentioned it himself, is it's just this tentative when he gets tentative and passive when he plays in big moments, and he needs to shake that. I would rather see him lose a couple of matches going big, going for broke, hitting and trying to come in rather than these long rallying balls. And unfortunately, he wins just enough by grinding guys out that he still believes he can do it that way.
Yeah.
Whereas I think he needs to play more to win in the big moments. He might be able to get away with it quarters and semis, but even in finals, he has got away with winning in finals. But I'm not sure he can beat the likes of a Sinner and Alcaraz in a Grand Slam final if he's hoping for them to miss rather than playing to win.
Do you think it's cumulative? I mean, it's like, boxers getting too many punches. Like he loses another major final, another big match. It might not have even been the worst big match. Sinner is brilliant, but just one too many. And eventually it just builds up and he's reached the point where it's like another bad loss, like another big loss. Do you think it could be the cumulative effect of another one added to the fire?
Totally. And, we use that phrase mental scarring in sport. And again, if we watched the Masters last night, we saw that play out in real time. Rory could not get over the line at the Masters. He couldn't. And just when we thought he might cruise to a victory, all those demons start to come back. And how you wrestle with those demons and how you deal with that situation. And I would love to know from Sasha how much he works with a mental coach, if at all. Rory's spoken about the fact that he's working with the famous golf coach, mental coach, Bob Rotella, and how important that has been for him. And it's not just every now and then. This has been an ongoing process for a long, long time. And does your player buy into that? Does Sasha even believe in doing it and practicing that or not? These are the questions I would love to ask him. And, do you do it once a week and think it's going to be okay? Do you do it every other day? So I would get really granular with him, especially on the mental side of the game. And it'll be interesting to see whether he is prepared to have those conversations and to go there. Is that a place he wants to go to or not? I find that so fascinating because you just have a look at so many of the greats of the game, and if they're doing it, if I was in Sasha's position and I wasn't doing it, my first thought would be, I need to be doing more of that.
Going to be fun. Going to be fascinating and fun. A couple more things with Robbie Koenig here on the Inside in Tennis podcast. Clay season, talking all the action, all the drama. Barcelona is the other big one right on the men's side. And looking at that field, it looks like it's 1,000. Like I was looking at the siege. You're getting all the players there. Alcaraz going in. Wouldn't miss it for the world. You've got Casper Ruud. You've got Tsitsipas. You've got the Demon. You've got a lot of talent. And I'm just curious who you think could maybe step up. Ruud won here last year, looking to get back on track. There's so many contenders, but some early thoughts and things you're looking for in Barcelona.
Just pulling up the draw now as we speak. For me, speaking of Barcelona, I think they're the best clay courts that we play on all season. I think they're better than Roland Garros. It's a very old club that you play at. Might be over 100 years old, and those courts are the best, Mitch. I loved going there and playing there. I think Alcaraz, especially coming off the win, is going to be tough to beat at home. Fokina's playing so well. Who else is in there in the mix? I'm just scrolling down the draw. Rublev.
You got Minaur. You got Tsitsipas plays Opelka. We'll see what that goes. But yeah, Minaur, another one that's just battles. He's playing in running shorts though, Robbie. I had to ask you about that. Minaur's new kit. They're like running shorts. I mean, I don't know. New trend, maybe.
I'll tell you, I got a great story about running shorts. I had a pair of those when we were sponsored by Essex back in the day. A good friend of mine who's a great strength and conditioning coach, Johan de Beer, he actually traveled with Tim Henman and Roger Federer for many years. And we each got a couple of pairs. Those we were sponsored by Essex with shoes, and we wore
Yeah.
these shorts. And I remember we wore them to the beach during our December Christmas holidays, right? And he had quite big legs and he looked really cool in them. And I thought, well, if he's got them, I must wear them. And I thought I looked cool in them. And then I saw a picture, obviously the old school picture, with us standing next to each other. And with my chicken legs, it looked ridiculous, Mitch. Terrible
Yeah.
look for me. Demon, I think, just about pulls it off. He's got some decent pegs on him. And given the fact that he's playing so well, I think we let him off the hook for now. If he starts to have some results, we might ask him to have to change the shorts. What do you reckon?
Yeah. Yeah, the shorts will look weird if he starts to crater off, but when you play well, you can get away with just about anything.
Yeah.
So, and it fits his game, right? Because he runs.
Yes, exactly. Holger Rune, I'm expecting something decent from him this week, especially after what happened in Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
So let's see how he does. He always plays nicely on the clay. Who else we got there? Quarter with a good one.
Holger's a fascinating one, right? Like his season's been all over the place too.
Yeah, a bit like the stock market, up and down and up and down. I never know what to expect from him at the moment. But I love the fact that Lars Christensen is back in his camp. I think we're going to see some good things ultimately when we have a look back at the 2025 season. I think we're going to see some good stuff from Holger. I hope we do.
Another young one to be in the mix. But Robbie, got to ask you before we wrap this up. Always give you time to just express your opinions, your hot take buttons. And I think I know where this is going, right? Because tournaments, the Masters 1000 events that are 1 week long, like we just saw, they're a dying breed. They're an extinction. They might be like that wolf that we bring back in 150 years or whatever they just brought back. But we've only got 2 left. Monte Carlo was a hit. And I think we're on the same page here. You'd like to see more 1 week events.
I know. The social media was blowing up when people were talking about it as well. And, certainly, Mitch, I always try to do a poll with players and coaches and just try and get a feel from them as to whether they enjoy the extended format or not. And I have not spoken to one coach or player yet that enjoys the longer format. So the question is, how do we get here? And I think I'd be fascinated to know who's made those decisions at board levels, who are the player representatives when those decisions were made. I think it would be great to have 1 or 2 of those guys on a podcast with you. And in fact, one of our contemporaries springs to mind, Mark Knowles. Mark, I love picking Mark's brain because he's on the player board and he is right there. I'm sure there's some information that Knowlesy can't divulge, but it would be fascinating to hear from him firsthand what the reasoning was behind it. What the sell was to the players. Was it purely about the cash? You guys are going to make more money. Guys slightly lower ranked are going to get into this 96 draw now. So it's basically a case of more people making more money. Are you for it or against it? And of course, when it comes to money, you can bet your bottom dollar that most of the players said, okay, we want that, but actually didn't think it through. So I'd like to hear both sides of that equation. I'd actually like to hear from a few players and Knowlesy on the other side of that conversation. I think it would be such an informative conversation as well to get a grip on. So there's that. It was one of the things that I had on my mind.
Well, no, it'd be and talking about the qualifying, like we were discussing, like the weekend before, how you would bridge the gap between the main draw being shorter, or in theory, and qualifying having to get placed, which is going to feature talented players if the draw is smaller.
Yes. So what I would do is I would like to use that qualifying weekend on Saturday and Sunday to play some main draw matches. I think it's a great way. If you've done well the week before, obviously you get the Monday and Tuesday starts. You get the later start. No special exemption if you go deep in a 250 the week before a Masters 1000. If you go deep in a 500 and you're not in the main draw, you would get a special exemption. Otherwise, you would just get a late start. So I would really look at maximizing the schedule. I think that's where the tour managers would really have to work hard to spread the first round over 4 days. And that's the way I would do it, especially if there was an overwhelming number of players that wanted to go back to the 1 week format. And Andy Roddick said it beautifully on his podcast. It's not about the days that you have off in between these 12-day events. It's about the consecutive days that you have off at the end of the season where you can really do your block training properly. That's what matters, not these days off in between in between matches at the Masters 1000. So yeah, that would be my solution to it. I've probably given a very brief overview there. I'm sure there's probably more dynamics at play, but I think you could really do a good job of maximizing 2 weekends, right? At qualifying weekend and finals weekend.
Well, we know that players and governing bodies are just getting along so well, so I just think it should be an easy fix right now. No, it look makes total sense.
Yeah.
I just used the example. We got Medvedev hatching off on Monday in that crazy epic match, first round. How many days would it take us to get that match in any other tournament?
Totally.
Almost a week. So
yeah, and exactly. So imagine if you have that as one of your weekend matches. If neither of them have done particularly well the week before, then they must know there's a possibility that they may play on a Saturday and Sunday. And if you start that trend of getting people in on that weekend, big bonus, man, huge bonus.
Well, we got Madrid as the next one. I know you're going to be calling that the next 1,000 events starting next week, getting in, settling in. So it's the second big stop, the second of 3 Masters events. And who knows, right? Like you have a guy in Novak Djokovic trying to get his form. Does Alcaraz keep it going? And the final event before Jannik Sinner returns. So storylines aplenty in that one.
Yeah, well said. I can't wait to see how it all shakes out. Novak hasn't been great, has he? He didn't play particularly well in Monte Carlo, and I think that would have disappointed him because that's his hometown, right? Spent so much time, he's lived there for a long time, so that would have hurt. But yeah, let's see what Madrid brings. It's quicker, it plays a little bit more like a hard court, so I think you'll enjoy that. It always throws up an odd winner every now and then, Madrid, because of the very different conditions, because of the little bit of altitude it has. Not a lot of altitude. It's not like it's playing somewhere in like Quito or one of those places. It's only about 560 meters.
Yeah.
So for some reason, it definitely affects the players. The court dries out as well, a bit more, so it makes conditions less heavy. It's actually a little bit like what we saw in Monte Carlo. If you play during the day and it's hot and it's lively, but at night it's pretty cold in Madrid as well. And you can almost have 2 very different kind of playing surfaces, depending on whether you're playing in the afternoon or whether you're playing in the evening. So there's a lot that goes into winning these tournaments, man, and you've got to handle very different conditions. And that's why you deserve a big check at the end of the week, Mitch.
Big check, maybe some rest, but not too much rest because it's Rome and then Roland Garros after. So can't wait. Robbie Koenig, this was fun. Anything else in the sports world, for the international fans other than golf, cricket or
no. The IPL's going on as far as our cricket fans are concerned. But
rugby, cricket,
I'm not across that so much, but the Masters was what we saw last night, and you touched on it beautifully about even the very best players in various sports. They struggle, they feel the pressure, and it's how do you deal with that pressure? That's why I love Augusta. I love watching the US Open golf as well because conditions are so difficult. And for me, I want to see the best in any sport, whatever sport it is. I love to see them in difficult conditions. How do you solve the problems, whether it's the course, whether it's the demons you're fighting in your head like Rory was. And that's what I love about the Masters in particular. It was so unique, and I was riveted. I could not get off the couch, Mitch. As badly as I wanted to go and take a pee, I was not leaving. I wanted to see every shot.
Rory battled, and if he would have lost that would have been something that maybe he doesn't recover from. But he wins, and he writes his own chapter, and that's why, as you said, best reality TV by far, sports. You never know what you're going to get. We know what we're going to get on this show when Robbie Koenig comes on, and that's just banger takes after takes and fun chats for sure. But Robbie, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming on the Inside In Tennis podcast. Can't wait to do it again soon.
Hey, Mitch, anytime, man. I love chatting with you, and we could do this for... Give me a 2-hour slot next time, man. Stop giving me just these 60 minutes.
2 hour. We're gonna have to get a panel. We're gonna have to, do it big. Get the debate going.
Let's ask him some hard pressed questions, okay?
Let's do it. Robbie, all the best, man. Thank you again.
Thanks much.
That was Robbie Koenig. This was the Inside In Tennis podcast. Again, available on all your platforms. So go to Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, wherever you get your shows. Leave us a nice review. Subscribe. A nice rating as well. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. I keep reminding you, but that's where all the video episodes are. A couple YouTube shorts as well. The channel is my name, @Mitch Michals. We're back in a little bit. A lot of good interviews with players, analysis. The road to Roland Garros is just heating up. So Can't wait to share all these takes and all these experts with you. For Robbie Koenig, I'm Mitch Michals. This was the Inside In Tennis Podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.